Go create a culture. Go create an environment that is so unique and so cool. Nobody ever wants to leave. The integrity of an organization gets set by the people at the top.
Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Man, I'm excited. Welcome Joe Williams, co-founder of Keller Williams.
Hard to believe.
Dude, you all have, what a business y'all have built.
Well, you know, it's funny, and you get this a lot. And Scott, you probably get this too, having done this about 25 years. You go places and people will look at you. One of the first questions is, did you think this was going, did you plan this? And of course the answer is no. No way.
Unless you're feeling ornery, then you say, yeah, absolutely. I knew you'd be the largest residential.
KW today is the largest privately owned franchise in the world. We are in 64 different countries, and we have an active agent count of a little north of 200,000 agents.
Wow.
So, and we have about 3,000 commercial agents kind of dispersed, primarily in the U.S.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is a KW agent.
I didn't know this. Where?
In Olathe, Kansas City.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, Kansas City. We've got several offices.
Yeah.
I know the regional owner there, a great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to believe sometimes.
I want to talk about a defining moment in your life, and you can kind of talk about some of the growing up years. But I know you lost your dad when you were 10 years old.
Yep.
Joe, where was that? And talk about how that experience has shaped you as the person and man that you are.
In fact, you know, it's funny, Doug, from our conversation last week, just thinking about this, there was even a seminal event prior to that. When I was a baby, I was born with club foot. And basically what that is, the one of your secondary feet has not fully developed. You know, they start out like this, and then they turn into that. And I bring that up because all of my elementary years were semi-dictated by wearing these goofy-looking corrective shoes.
Struggle from the very, very beginning.
And you know, in a subtle way, how elementary kids, you know, can be brutal with things like that. You know, most of the kids understand, but, you know, there's always a class bully, you know, this guy. And I have to laugh. I had great mom and dad. And so my mom said, well, here's how we're going to fix this. And because the doctor, he insisted that I have a correct shoe with correct arch and all that stuff. So she found out that basically you could buy a shoe look like a Carhartt boot.
Yeah.
And so I was a kid in boots all through elementary school. And I bring it up because all my life, I've kind of rooted for the underdog.
I'd say so.
You know, when I see scenarios where somebody's getting picked on or they're getting singled out or whatever, I naturally tend to gravitate to think about, it's more the empathy.
Yeah, right.
You develop a very strong empathy for this type of stuff. And so all my life, I've always kind of rooted for the underdog or the guy that comes to us and says, hey, I think I got a great idea for a business. I'm all over it.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you're thinking. Let's help you develop this. And so that stays with you.
I'd say so. It helps form who you are as a person.
Does. And then, of course, then my dad passing away. I was 10, mom and 3 kids. And
are you oldest, middle?
I was the oldest. I was the oldest son. My sister was actually older. But, you know, at 10 years old, I remember looking in the mirror and saying to myself, okay, I got to step up here. And to this day, I laugh. My mom passed in 96, but the image she had, my dad had just bought one of those Montgomery Ward self-propelled mowers with a Briggs and strap.
Dad was a hero to you.
Yeah, and so of course Dad dies, and so I'm thinking, okay, I
got to figure out how to
I got to mow the lawn,
use this mower.
Yeah, you know, and so I could get it started and everything. But when I would try to push it, I was very small, and the handle kept, you know, coming up.
You're looking at it.
Yeah, I couldn't. And so finally, my mom, who you know, I'd lived in the country, Taylor, Texas, back in the Depression, she comes out with some baling wire, wires that sucker down. And I could tell you reams and reams and reams of stories about that, but sum total was you mature very quickly.
Let's go back to the mirror for a second. So you looked in the mirror after your dad died and said, I need to step up.
Oh, yeah.
So what made you not at that moment say, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever? What's life going to look like?
Well,
I mean, of course there was mourning and all that, but like, it's like you took a very positive view of, okay, now I'm going to step into this space.
That had everything to do, Scott, with how I was raised, I think. I mean, when you're that age, you'd be amazed how resilient children are. And those of us sitting here who probably all have kids know. And it was just how I was raised.
Yeah.
I could see the struggle that my mom was going through. You got to remember, this is 1964. We had one car. Mom didn't even know how to drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
First thing she had to do was go figure out how to get a driver's license. And so I could see that struggle and certainly love my family. And that's when I stepped back and said, okay, time to step up. Dad used to mow the lawn. He took out the trash. He was cleaning the kitchen. Boom. And but it was all good.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised your mom didn't just throw the keys to you and say, the heck with me learning. Joe, you just take over.
Something else too, Doug, I'll share with you. Something I've come to understand now. Now I'm at the age where I've got friends that are, having that same issue.
Yeah.
And as bad as heart attacks are, in a way it was a real blessing. One day you're there, next day you're not. It's not the long goodbye that many of us right now
That's right.
have to struggle with our friends and things. And so it's an interesting way to go, but I've often thought, if I ever need to go, that's it.
I've had the very same conversation with myself, which is like, is it better to just instantly go? We had a friend recently pass, fairly young, early 60s, heart attack, and was having coffee with his wife, went upstairs, and then she found him later and, gone. Like,
You're gone.
no time to say goodbye or go through that process. Or, like someone gets diagnosed with a terminal disease and the end is coming at some point and you got maybe a year, maybe 2 years, whatever. I'm not sure which is best, but
I would pick the first alternative.
yeah.
Having friends now, Scott, that are going through some of those early dementia issues, they didn't choose that.
Yeah.
But to see how that impacts those families,
Yeah.
I'll take the first alternative.
Yeah, for sure.
When it's time, the big man can put me on the bus, and away we go.
That's right.
That's right. And that's a great reminder, Joe. We don't we can wish for one of the two, but we don't even get that choice.
Don't give the choice. It's one of those things where you live every day. One of the greatest after dinner speakers I ever heard, the gentleman, in fact, I often end some of my motivational talks when we're training the agents with this. I tell them, there was a guy, and he basically took 100 centenarians. In other words, they reached the age of 100. And he asked them one question, and that was, if you could do it all over again, what would you do? He said he basically got 3 answers. Answer number 1 was, I would have risked more. I mean, I would have called Mary Jane and asked her to the prom.
Yep.
Kids today don't do that. They date via Facebook. But we're of the age. You had to call that girl and go, will you go with me?
Let's be real. We even had to actually do the circles. We had to do that thing.
We had to dial her up. But I would have risked more. The second thing they said, I would have lived every day fully. I mean, now I'm 71 years old. I get up every day and I go, thank you, Jesus. I got another day.
I'm here.
Okay, I'm here. Let's go make it count. But they said that at the age of 100.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Everybody tells you to do it. And the third thing, and I thought this was interesting, they said, I wished I could leave more of a legacy so people knew I was here.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's incredible.
Pretty cool message.
Joe, so you've got two very defining moments, growing up with struggle personally, and then obviously with your dad, and then growing up and maturing. So talk to us about forming Keller Williams, and in some of that, Joe, how these experiences helped shape you as you all start Keller Williams. Take us through the origin story of KW.
So I end up working practically my whole life because, we weren't rich, but we weren't poor.
Correct.
But Mom didn't have money to throw around. If you wanted to buy a car, you got to go for it.
You got to go pay for it.
So my senior year of high school, I remember I want to buy a new car. Well, the only way I could do it, I'd worked all through my junior year retail.
Yeah.
At a toy store with a Jewish family.
Incredible.
Now, if you want to learn how to sell...
In Taylor, Texas?
No, in San Antonio.
San Antonio, okay.
So if you want to learn how to sell, go to work for a good Jewish family.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn everything you learn. And they were wonderful. It was a toy store in North Star Mall, one of the big Rouse malls down there. Anyhow, so my senior year back in the day, you could go to school half a day and work half the day. It was called distributive education.
Yeah.
But that's how I could get 40 hours a week to pay for my new car. So I loved what I was doing. And when I stayed with that family and started junior college, San Antonio Junior College, by the time I was a sophomore, that's when I really started thinking about, okay, what am I gonna really study when I get to a major university? And one of our clients, Tony Specie, was a broker, real estate broker in San Antonio. Great guy. He says, Joe, you need to get in a real estate business. Because he'd been bringing his boys. We had a huge hobby counter at the store.
Yep.
And we sold like Estes rockets, Lionel trains, Cox, gasoline power. You could never sell that stuff to them.
Yeah.
They would never let you give that to kids. But we sold all that stuff. Tony had been coming in for years buying stuff for his boys. So I went down and interviewed with Tony so he could tell me about real estate. And it sounded fantastic. I said, Tony, sign me up. So he's filling out the application. I'll never forget this. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, when he asked my birthday. Come to find out, to have contractual majority in Texas, you had to be 21 years old. So I'm looking at Tony going, there's got to be an answer. He says, well, let me call. He calls David Carter, his old fraternity brother from Texas A&M. And all I hear Tony going, yeah, I could work. Hangs up. I'm like, what? Turns out the state of Texas has a law that if you're the oldest surviving son of a surviving spouse, you can get licensed at the age of 19.
Oh my God.
And that's how I became one of the youngest real estate licensed agents in the state
Unbelievable.
of Texas. Wow. Because it was done via court order. And so when I got out of college, I was, of course, studying commercial real estate at the University of Texas.
Okay. Yep.
Because they had a degree program in real estate. It's BBA with a specialty in real estate.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, one of my professors says, hey, you ought to come to work for us. He worked for a guy, Charlie Davis, C.A. Davis and Associates, great firm. He used to know Henry Miller Jr. here in Dallas. They were all good buds, almost commercial guys. So I go to see Charlie. I get out of school. I'm still got a semester to go.
Okay.
And he's a great guy. He says, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to sell commercial real estate. He says, Joe, I can give you a phone and a desk. That's what you want. But the IRS is about to change the tax laws. And nobody knows exactly what they're thinking. So you can call everybody all over the place, but nobody's going to do anything until they know what the law is going to be. And he looks down at my resume and goes, wait a minute, haven't you been selling houses as a sophomore? Which I had. And he goes, man, my old buddy Leo Herzog made $100,000 last year selling homes. He turns around, and back in those days, everybody had a credenza on your desk, right? He turns around, grabs his phone. Next thing I hear him going, JB, Yeah, oh, they're terrible. They're not going to do anything. Hey, listen, I got a guy you need to hire. Yeah, hold on.
Hand you the phone.
He just hands me, I don't know who he's calling. Hands me the phone. Well, it's J.B. Goodwin. J.B. was the brother of Guy Goodwin, a high school buddy of mine that we graduated with together in San Antonio. J.B. had started a real estate company in Austin, Texas. That's how I ended up going to work for J.B. And I was there for 8 years.
Okay.
And about 2 years in, I wrote an article for Texas Realtor Magazine about recruiting on college campuses, which is a little odd for real estate companies.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't pay a salary.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's on commission.
Yeah.
So we drove up to Baylor, me and a guy named Sam Fitzgerald. We interviewed all these guys. Driving back, I asked Sam, anybody look interesting? He says, well, there's this and that, but there was this one guy, and that was Gary Keller.
No way.
Gary had gotten out of Baylor at that time. He had a degree in real estate, too. In fact, we laugh. I tell Gary, I said, we're probably the only two guys in the world that actually have degrees.
Yeah.
That company,
That's a great point. Yeah.
You never find that.
Yeah.
So Gary came to work for JB. He was there for 6 years. I was there for 8 when we hatched the idea for Keller Williams. And at the time, Doug, it was nothing more than, okay, let's break off and let's just build a better mousetrap.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter who you work for. It's easy after you've been there for a little while to realize, okay, here's something they need to fix. Here's a way we could do it better.
Yep.
And that was what we were going to do.
And you guys are in Austin at this time.
We were in Austin.
And you're selling homes.
We broke off. I was selling. Actually, I'd moved into commercial. Gary was managing offices for JB.
Okay.
So we start the company, and
Just the two of you?
just the two of us.
Okay.
We just do the better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we grow it to about 65 agents.
Oh, my
Wait,
goodness.
what year is this when you started?
This was 83 when we started.
83.
So by the end of 85, we've got about 70 agents. We're doing good. And then the bottom dropped out of the market, as you recall, Scott. And you know for sure,
Yeah.
Texas in 86, S&L crashed.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Oil crashed. Just massive crash. And this went on for 4 or 5 years. RTC came in, auctioned everything off. You had see-through buildings throughout Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio. It was Armageddon. The board of realtors in Austin went from 4,200 agents down to 1,800.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys had 65 agents, and these are all on commission, so no salary. So,
salary.
And they're signing up with you at that time because you have a better mousetrap. You and Gary are good salespeople, and you've convinced them you've got a better mousetrap.
And Gary really was. Gary loved the management and training side. That was really his forte. Me, I'm a sales guy.
Yeah.
I like to put things together. That's why I do a lot of development. Now it's just natural for me. But we were a good mix. And by the way, we're separate personalities.
Yeah.
Gary is very head guy, very visionary. Me, I'm all heart.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good combination. And but when the market collapsed,
Yeah.
we looked at each other and said, all right, we got to change something. We got to totally revamp what we're doing. And we went to the agents and said, look, we know we're going to make it out of this. But unless we change how you and I work together as an agent and a broker, we're going to go through this every time a cycle goes down. So how about we come up with a better way for you and I to work together? And so we presented 3 or 4 very good ideas to them. And to their credit, they said, let's try it. Let's try it. Good friend of mine, and here's the essence of what we did at KW. This good friend of mine, he's an ER doctor. He once said to me, you know, Joe, hospitals don't really have patients. Doctors do. But a doctor can't function without a well-designed surgical center. What you guys really need to learn to be is the surgical center. And let your agents go out there and take care of the patients on their own. You guys don't need to do that. They do that anyway. You need to become the coaches and consultants to help them learn how to run their business. And that's what we did. And I laugh because all the time, when you look at the secret sauce of a lot of companies, often it's complicated, but most of the time it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not.
Yeah.
And so it allowed us, number one, to craft a vision about who they should be and who we should be.
Yeah.
And that was the start of a beautiful relationship, because we looked at them. Let me just give you one example. For years, real estate brokers would buy the signs, buy the lock boxes, pay for all the ads, all of this stuff. And then you and I would be on a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
You bring in a commission, you get half, I get half. Life is good. We went to them and said, we don't think that raises responsible agents. How about you go buy your signs? You go buy your lock boxes. From now on, we're not paying for any advertising. And here's why. When 4 guys are playing golf in Dallas, and one of them looks at the other 3 friends and says, hey, I'm going to take this fantastic job with Microsoft. I need to move to Bellevue. Any of you guys know a good agent here in Dallas? That's how people find real estate agents. And so those 3 guys go, hey, I know a guy. He's great. Been with Debbie Holiday for years. Blah, blah. I'll give you his name. And there you go. And that's how the business functions. By the way, that's how you find your pediatrician. That's how you find your gym coach. That's how you find everything.
Your wealth advisor.
Totally. Your wealth advisor.
It's trust.
Yeah.
It's trust.
Did you and Gary use the word franchise when you started? Did that?
No. Didn't even know what that meant.
Understood. So walk us. I know you. Yeah.
From afar. But
right.
We never talked
You
about
just were. First of all, I love, out of pain, so many quality ideas. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
In that crucible, you and Gary came up with clearly a better way. And when do you start referring to it as a franchise?
That is a decision you have to make. That's a logistical decision you make, but you can't do that until you create a product that's got so much demand. It's now franchisable.
That's well said.
Okay.
Well said.
So what we did, we went to the agents. Look, from now on out, you're running your own business.
This was that group of 65.
Yes. And oh, by the way, in fairness, we're going to put you on a 70-30 split.
Correct.
You're now getting 70, we get 30.
You aligned
all
interest.
Those signs and ads, and we're going to give you the money.
Yep.
We're not just saying you have to do it. You get the money.
Yep.
You go run that.
You decide.
Yep.
And by the way, and these are things we discovered, once the office got to 100 agents, because the word got out on the street, hey, KW's got this great program, and they're going to teach you how to run your business. Next thing you know, I got 100 agents.
Yeah.
Well, Gary started looking at the numbers, and one day he says, you know what? If we got 100 agents here, we could cap their commissions at a certain number. In other words, once they sell, let's just use a number, 7 homes. After that, Doug, you keep all the money.
Yeah.
Until you roll over every year. In other words, we got to have a starting point.
Right.
Well, we call that the cap commission program. No one was doing that.
You
Agents
aligned interest.
Agents had never heard of that. And of course, if you look at the Pareto principle, 20-80 rule, right? At the least, if I've got 100, 20 of them should be able to cap. So we came back and said, okay, rather than have these crazy variable expenses to run a real estate company. And that's what you have when you're buying the signs on the lockboxes. Let's get our expenses down to the basics. Let them pay for everything.
Yep.
But once they sell those 7 homes, they keep the rest of the money. They go to 100% commission. No one had ever done that.
Mm-hmm.
But that only works with bigger offices.
Yes.
Right? You have to scale those offices.
Yeah.
And it's Walmart's formula. Okay, let's go run these operations outside of the main cities and get enough scale, and then we can lower our prices and blah, 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 and you know the story. So we basically said if we could run larger offices, 100 agents, 200 agents, we could easily cap the commissions.
Yep.
And that's what we did. So as we did this, when I say there were 4 or 5 good ideas, by combining all of those ideas, we were able to create an environment. And this is where I've always had a theory, Doug. I call it the stable table theory. Okay. The stable table is this. If I have a table and I put 1 leg on it, how stable is it? Well, it's not. 2 legs, it's not. 3 legs, it's a stool, but I'm not going to let my grandchild on it. So give me a table with 4 solid legs. So this is my way of saying, I don't care if it's a business, if it's a marriage, if it's an endeavor, if it's a nonprofit. You got to figure out what are your 4 table legs you need to run that operation as efficiently as you can. And for us, table leg number 1 was get that vision. And the vision was...
This is KW's stable table.
Stable table theory.
Yep.
Our first leg to run that company
Yep.
was the fact that you are the guy running your own business.
Yep. That was the vision.
That was the vision.
Okay.
And that's
Love it.
usually table leg number 1 in any company.
Yep.
It's true for True North. It's true for Kroger. It's true for anybody.
Yep.
Why are you there?
Yep. Yep.
It's like when I'm talking to married people and we're talking these things, I go, why are you married?
Yeah.
What is it that you and your spouse have in common? Where are you trying to go with this relationship? If you can answer that question, you're halfway there to make it 44 years. So table leg number 1 was get the vision. Table leg number 2. Table leg number 2 for every company is different. And it's totally succinct to that company. When Southwest Airlines started, their vision was to create a flying experience on a discount that everybody would want to do again and again and again.
Yep.
Table leg number 2 for them was a combination of a lot of things. Better economics. We're going to fly the same plane everywhere.
Right.
We're not going to charge for bags.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to have reserved seating. We're going to have stewardesses in pink hot pants.
Yep. Yep.
Of course, we're going back to the 70s, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was flying, I thought, I think I've died, gone to heaven. I'm going to do this more often. But, you know, that was the early Southwest Airlines. But that was their second table. For us, it was the economics for the agent.
Yep.
Better commission splits, better training. If I could make more money, I could shuttle more money into economics, being training and technology.
Okay.
Today it would be technology. Back then, there wasn't any. There wasn't any technology. But table leg number 2 is very distinct to a particular company.
Yep.
Table leg number 3 is almost always the same. Go get the best people.
Yep. Talent.
Just go get the best talent. You asked about franchising. Here's a wonderful story that your listeners will profit from.
Yep.
So we get up to 65 offices.
Wow.
Now we're doing that by franchising, okay? Because that's the way you do it in real estate. Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Louisiana. We hire a guy, Bain, corporate consulting. God bless him, he passed away during the pandemic. Bless you, Bain. Good guy. He comes and he interviews all 60 of our operating partners, independently owned offices. He comes back and he says, look, 2 things. Number 1, I love your ideas. I love how you guys are. And no one used this word back then, disrupting
Yeah.
He didn't use that word 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We had totally
Clearly you were.
disrupted
Yeah. 100%.
how real estate brokerages function. He said, I love your ideas. I have no idea how far this is going to go. Remember, we only have 60 offices, right? Second thing, though, you guys don't know anything about franchising. And he was right. We didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're just a couple of swinging real estate guys.
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
here
Exactly.
Doing our best.
Yeah.
He says franchising is all about models and systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a year. You guys going to pay me $1 million, and I'm going to teach you every model and system that involves franchising. And the first thing he taught us was, how do you go find talented people? And you think about this. People have worked at companies for years, and no one's ever taught them how you interview someone.
Yep.
I didn't know. I interviewed people for years, recruited agents for years.
Yeah.
But no one ever said, here's the 10-step process that you use to go find talent. And by the way, don't drop any one of those.
Exactly. Don't cut corners.
Don't duck corners. And I got it. In fact, the first thing he takes you through is an exercise. The cost of a bad hire. And it's an exercise. You don't know a piece of paper, and you look at it and you go, wow.
Yeah, you put a real dollar figure to them.
Well, we all know you hire a bad manager, they're there for 6 months, they run everybody off. Then when you finally fire them, the books are a mess. The client relationships are a mess. It's a mess.
It's a mess.
And how much?
And expensive.
Yeah, and no one ever adds it up.
Yeah.
That's what he does. That's the first step. So after that, you're like, I'm all ears.
I'm listening.
And that is the third table.
Okay.
Go get the best people.
Love it.
Even if you're unorganized, even if you're a klutz,
Yeah.
but you got the best manager running the operation, they'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. Yep.
They figure it out. Fourth, and this is probably the most important table leg, although they're all important.
Yeah.
Go create a culture. Go create an environment that is so unique and so cool. Nobody ever wants to leave.
So one of the questions I had for you, Joe, and sort of prepping for this was, you got 200,000 agents around the world, literally. How do you keep everybody singing from the same song sheet? To a degree, they're independent contractors because they're franchisees, and
Totally.
But how do you create the glue with that many people spread across that many locations? Because I mean, that's one of the things that every company really wants. Every company wants to have a great culture, or most do. And then you've got these independent agents and contractors. How do you get everybody singing from the same song sheet?
There's probably 2 or 3 things I would say, Scott. And first thing I would say is, how do children learn things? Children don't learn by listening to you. They learn by watching you. Okay? So leadership, in our minds, is a visual thing.
So good.
Well, if you want to have a productive sales meeting, and you go into the average sales meeting, your top 10 people aren't there, what are you saying? It's not important. Doesn't matter whether you're here or not. But if I walk in there and my top 10 people are there and participating, okay, this ain't rocket science.
Yeah.
So leadership's a big piece of that puzzle. And by the way, the integrity of an organization, in our mind, gets set by the people at the top. If they have integrity, if they display integrity in all the things they do, it's amazing how that filters all the way down to the newest guy on the block. And everybody gets that. So leadership is a huge, huge variable in maintaining that culture. Because it does get set at the top. However, as every leader will tell you, if you want an idea to flourish, your people who work for you at the lowest level have to feel like it was their idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they think it's their idea, then they're going to push it and they're going to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
So we, for example, realized early on that we needed an agent leadership council in every office. So once a month, we could get them all together and talk about things that matter. And culture is a big part of how we do that.
Yeah.
How do we help people? How do we help their career?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say, oh, we got a great culture, but everybody in there is broke. Guess what? Nobody thinks much about the culture.
Yeah.
And we've been very profit-minded with them. We tell them, it's great to be in real estate, but I've been poor, I've been rich. I'll tell you, being rich is a lot more fun than being poor.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to be in the business, understand profit is a driving force.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the changes we made, and is a great example, Scott. So not only did our offices have 200 people, now we had offices with 300 people,
Mm-hmm.
400 people. I mean, this thing just started to take a life of its own. And Gary went back and looked at the numbers. He said, you know what? We heard of an idea one time that we thought was really cool, but it's very contextual. And what do I mean? I was at an Amway meeting when I got out of college. You remember the Amway
Oh,
meeting?
yeah.
Doug,
Oh,
you
yeah.
probably got invited. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You and I with these salesperson. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I really don't want to sell soap. But they got to drawing these circles on the board. And I remember everybody left the room. And I went up there. I said, tell me again about these circles. Because I thought that was an ingenious way to get everybody helping each other.
Yep. Yep.
Now, granted, I made money on who I recruited, but that was okay.
Yep.
Tell me an organization that doesn't recruit good people.
Right.
When True North needs to add another wealth advisor, it's not like you go to Google, you gather everybody together and say, hey, guys, we got an empty desk here.
Yep.
Go draft somebody that we need here.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works.
Right.
So we went to the agents. We said, we got an idea. We're now franchising ourselves. So growth is definitely part of our trajectory. But what if in growing, I could enrich you in the process? Because whether I had a program that did that or not, you'd still recruit people.
Mm-hmm.
And they were recruiting people.
Yeah.
It was all day long. So we came up with a profit share downline program. And you know what? There was a guy in Dallas, Texas. He turned out to be one of the preeminent developers in the world. He took a lowly industrial park, turned it into a thing of beauty. Then he took hotels, and he stuck atriums on them, and he built them all around the world. And he used a system very similar to that. And that man's name was Trammell.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember studying how Trammell had done his partnership program. And Gary and I both looked at that and said, well, that's exactly what we're doing with the downline profit share program. And so we implemented that. And now I had agents who were in the office who, because they were getting checks monthly from production that Scott had done because they recruited Scott in, they now felt like owners, not just agents.
Yep.
And if you want to change the culture inside a company real quick, go turn that company from 200,000 active agents into 200,000 owners.
100%.
And all of a sudden, overnight.
So let me ask you a couple of questions on culture and some of the unique things about your business. So you got 200,000 agents, but you've got a corporate staff or a corporate office, Keller Williams, that supports all those agents that are not part of the franchise model. They're employees of Keller Williams Corporate, or however you guys refer to it. So is there a difference between the culture of that group who are employees of Keller Williams supporting all these agents and then the culture of all the independent franchisees?
It's a different culture from the standpoint that, as you say, Scott, they are employees.
Yeah.
We've always had a profit share program for them, though, too.
Yeah.
And because they're paid to do a specific job, it's not like that profit share can be paid off of sales down below. So we organized a profit share program that works for them. And I would like to think that their culture is very, very similar.
Yeah.
But again, it gets back to how good is your leadership in
That's
maintaining that. And this is the cool thing about franchising. We can run this whole thing with maybe 300 people working at the main franchise office.
Okay.
Because one of the first things you have to do with franchises is you're going to run regional owners. So, for example, Carolinas, both North and South Carolina owned by one regional owner. So there's a leadership level right there.
Yeah.
And they have a lot to do with helping to set the tone in their region. Then each office has an operating partner who hires a team leader to run that office. So there's several layers of leadership in there. And we do, as a national and international company, we have 2 major events every year. A lot of the agents go to. We just came back from the family reunion. That's what we call it. You could call it our convention in Vegas. Had about 10, 11,000 agents there.
Wow.
That's a huge crowd.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's a big crowd.
I mean, when you're standing there, our biggest issue now is the fire marshal.
Yeah.
Because when your group is that big,
Yeah.
you really only got 4 or 5 towns you can go to,
Right.
where you get a big enough room to stick them all in. But that's a good question.
Amazing. So y'all have about 300
300
folks that are
basically who run
call it corporate.
the main Austin corporate operation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to continue this. You were recognized by Stanford, and they wanted to do a study on you all.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about this, and it's fascinating. Obviously, Stanford is the best of the best in thinking through innovation.
They'd like to think that.
That's well said. Spoken like a true Longhorn. Well, I appreciate
and a native Texan.
and a native becomes business school is pretty solid, isn't it?
There you go. So was SMU.
Yeah, it is. I like it. Keep it local. Walk us through that journey, that why they chose you all and some of that experience around featuring your all's culture.
Yeah, I think what happened with Stanford was our growth, it wasn't until Bain showed up
Yep.
and said, look, here's how you lay the foundation to grow the franchise. Well, it took us easily a year and a half to really learn how you go find these people and all. Yeah. And that's when we hit the hockey stick.
Yep.
27,000 agents, next year 36, next year 49, just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And so Stanford noticed that.
Yep.
And they were looking in categories, and they looked at real estate. They're going, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, they came down, they interviewed Gary and all of our guys there.
Yep.
Because they deduced that the thing that really set us apart was the culture. Was that these agents loved where they were.
Yeah.
They thought of themselves as owners. I mean, it was a totally different, and it really was.
Yeah.
And it gets back to somewhat a sideline thing, Doug. When we would go into these towns as we expanded, it's funny how one of the traits of leadership is to constantly stay into curiosity. Okay?
Love that.
And I can tell you, with offices all over the United States, there are regional differences throughout the country.
Sure.
That only in Texas, Oklahoma, maybe the Midwest, where a really successful business guy who's done well, and a competitor comes to town, rather than say, oh, well, that's never going to work here, most Texas guys will go figure out what they're doing.
Yep.
They stay into curiosity.
Yeah.
That's just the Texans, right? And so we would go to all these places, and these brokers just didn't pay attention. They kind of like, well, they've got a downline. Oh, they're the Amway of real estate. That's not going to work here in Seattle. Well, it's really funny. We had a broker, and it was funniest retort I ever heard. when one of the brokers, one of the really good firms up there, there are two really good firms up there in Seattle, and the guy's like, well, it's all about the wealth building. They're going to find that real estate's different here in Seattle. And Gene looked at him and said, what, you don't have buyers and sellers? So, yeah, it is, and it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, it gets back to the agents working with their relationships.
That's
with
absolutely the basics. Yep.
So, Stanford, I think, noticed it. They came down, they did a study, and they really get down to the meat of the matter to try to figure out how you
what is the secret sauce of that?
What's the secret sauce? And they came back and really said it was the culture and stuff. But what was interesting, and you and I shared this,
yes,
our mantra has always been God, family, business, in that order.
Yep.
Okay? Get your spiritual life together the way it needs to be. Stay close to your family. I don't want to hear about anybody missing something with their kids unless they just absolutely couldn't find another agent to go do it. I get it.
Yep.
I mean, back when we were building this thing, I had to be on some open houses on Sunday. I get it.
Yep.
But that really was the mantra. And Mo Anderson, who was our CEO at the time while those studies were being done, fabulous woman, just incredible. Stanford invites you to come speak to the students the following year if they do a business study on you. And Mo would tell me, she said, Joe, I would go there and they'd have us all up on stage. And of course, these students, they would raise their hand and say, well, explain this God, family, business. She said, well, they're all a bunch of young kids. Probably haven't been going to church in a long time. You know, their spiritual awakening hasn't happened yet. They haven't seen enough miracles, so they don't know. But they used to look at that and go, gosh, and Mo would laugh. She said, yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that for them sometimes.
Yeah. It's so powerful. Yeah, they were so caught off guard, the fact that religion or spiritualness was even in your all's culture.
Oh, yeah.
Joe, you've got so many experiences, reps. You have so many business owners. How many regional owners do you have approximately?
37.
37. Our audience are business owners. And so in our kind of final few minutes here, it's a great exercise we like to do at Decision Points is you've got a room full of 100 business owners, CEOs. They're busy, they're successful, whatever the case may be. From your experience, what are 1, 2, or 3 tips that you'd give them, whether it be pragmatic, whether it be philosophical? What would be your message to business owners?
This is easy. Step number 1 is you got to get a vision for what their job is going to entail. If their vision aligns with your vision, and by the way, this was step 7 in finding talented people. Bain took us through something called a future self exercise. And what it was, let's say, Doug, I'm looking at hiring you as the team leader for the Raleigh office. I'm going to look at you and say, Doug, if we were sitting at a great margarita place in Raleigh a year from now, 2 years from now, and you were able to look at me and say, Joe, taking this job as the team leader in the Raleigh office was the best thing I ever did. I want you to share with me what you think would have to happen in this job for you to be able to say something like that. And then I'm going to shut up and I'm going to listen. And you may say something like, well, I made a lot of money. I'll say, Doug, what does that mean? What does that mean? We all know money is money, but it is what you do with it. And generally, you want to make money to go do something. So what I'm going to do is dig a little bit to find out why do you want to make money? Is it your grandkids? Is it your kids, your wife, travel, whatever, security? Doesn't matter. I want to know how you define success at this job you're looking at. Because if we can do that and it aligns with what we need together, it's going to be a beautiful relationship. And that's a very important aspect to us of being able to hire talented people, getting aligned with them.
Yep.
Because sometimes it doesn't align.
Correct.
And in a conversation like that in future stuff, you're going to find out.
Yep.
And now, if it does align, then I'm going to make sure that we're going to have in writing a path. People would call it a job description.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? In other words, I want you to be able to be equipped to do the job well. And even down to the lowest paid person inside your organization, what we find is, and this is interesting because now with COVID and everybody went home, one of the comments I've said to a lot of business owners is, look, you guys need to pull out your job descriptions and make sure they're very clear. Because if they're not physically with you, your administrative staffs are normally not what we call high Ds. They're not D drivers. So you got to make sure that you got that job set up. And that job is the job description is 3 parts. What are the tasks that we need to get done? Make a list of what it is you need to get done. Second would be, what are the tools that they need to know to be able to accomplish that job? For example, if you're a team leader, I need to put you through a recruit select class. Mm-hmm. So you know how to go find the 10 best agents by knowing what steps to go find them. I've got to go train you in that.
Yep.
If I don't, it's my fault, not yours. But that's one of the tools. And tools can be things like software and things like that too. Those are easy to identify. It's the other tools I need to equip you with, and they're important. And last, if you know what the task is, and you know what tools, and you're efficient with those tools, what do the results look like? If you do accomplish it, what are the results? Where you and I can measure that. Mm-hmm. And we're very big on coaching. We teach coaching and consulting to our guys all the time. When you're new, every week we're on the line for 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Hey, Doug, how'd you do last week? Now, before you get that week, you submit a 411 every week. Here's the things I think, here's my 4 weeks, here's my month, here's my year, and you refine it. Send it to me. So I've got it on the phone while I'm talking to you. Yep. How'd your week go? I see you had this. How'd you do on that? Well, I didn't get there. How do you feel about that? Well, I feel terrible. What are you going to do to make up for that? That's coaching.
Yep.
Now, once you've proved you're successful, I don't need to be doing that.
Right.
But early on, and again, it gets back to vision. What is the vision for the job for it to work and get accomplished? Mm-hmm. And so we're real big on reducing that to writing. It's funny, we when we train the agents, we talk about VDPR, vision, discipline, planning, results. I always tell the agents, why when you go somewhere for 10 days, you're so massively productive 4 days before you leave?
Yeah.
It's because you made a list.
Yep.
You wrote it down. So that's what I want you to do, Doug, with your career with us. Every week, let's get a visual written list of where you're trying to go. Because it's funny how what you write down gets done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Joe, you said you're 71.
Yep.
Is Gary?
Gary's about 4 years behind me.
Okay.
I think he turned 68 this year.
Okay. So you guys are fairly close in age. So what's next for Keller Williams?
Well, and you guys don't know this. I shared this with Ty on the ride over. Keller Williams just made a major merger with a private equity operation out of Greenwich.
Okay.
Stone Point Capital. We just merged up with Stone Point.
Awesome.
And we did that because the biggest problem we have, Scott, today is I have to compete with companies that are public that don't have to make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you ask me what's the biggest problem we have, that's the biggest issue. Mm-hmm. KW, unlike almost all of our competitors, has always been highly profitable. Mm-hmm. But we're private.
Yeah.
And we were approached by the IPO market 3-4 years ago, but we weren't equipped to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, all of our accounting and stuff was stuff that we've been using for years. Who knew what our numbers were?
Yeah.
But it's a good merger for us because now this really, it gives us some liquidity and some power to go do some really cool things. Mm-hmm. And we haven't really had that flexibility before. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. I mean, the beauty of real estate is, what's the old saying? Real estate agents, they don't retire, they just become listless.
I haven't heard that.
What I find with most successful real estate brokers is they just cut back their schedules a little bit, but they keep their finger in it all day long.
Yep.
So we talk a lot about on the podcast these 4 pillars that we have around exit planning and kind of transitioning to the next phase.
Yep.
There's 2 personal pillars, 2 professional pillars. The 2 personal are kind of purpose, like what are you going to do post.
Yep.
There's a wealth planning piece in there, which is where we spend a lot of time at True North to get your personal house in order with estate planning and other things.
Right.
And then business processes, which you guys spent a ton of time on, and we just spent a fair amount of time talking about. And then value. How do you create enterprise value? I'm curious, like for you and Gary, like purpose. What's next for y'all? I mean, do you guys see that you'll just continue to stay in this for a long time? Or how do y'all think about that?
I can't answer for Gary.
Yeah.
I mean, we're good business partners, but he'll go off a different direction. For me, we look now at some major issues that we'd like to be able to try to figure out and solve. Housing cost, crazy. For new people to get into a house now, Ty and I were talking about this on the way up. My first house was $83,000 in 1981. Today, the average for a first-time home is $400,000. I've had a lot of contact with people that are now doing modular, really cool technology things, but it really takes a village to go figure out how you make that work.
Yeah.
And I would love to be involved in helping do that. And so for me, we can do lots of development deals. I mean, that's what we do all day long now anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm helping our commercial guys. I help with the commercial brokerage side.
Yeah.
That's likely to expand. So we'll be working on that. But I would love to go into a couple of projects like how you get those starter homes back down to a reasonable number that work. Whoever figures that out is going to do really good things for society.
Yeah.
Because that needs to be solved. That's a big, major issue. And with technology, AI, if some of this coming through, we may be able to use some of that to get some of that solved.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But for me, I haven't stopped. I won't stop for at least another 10 years. I'll slow down because I'm not on a clock. If I need to take off for 30 days and go somewhere, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is kind of funny because Mama is looking at me going, when are we going to spend the money? And I get it.
That's a good conversation.
That's a good conversation.
That's right. She's deserving of it. Trust me.
That's great.
Joe, beyond grateful for your transparency. I think of so many struggle and how that's formed you. Life is caught. It's not taught. You talk about modeling, aligning interest. I think there are so many things. I know you and Gary have made plenty of mistakes, and y'all have talked about some of those, but there's a lot of reasons why you guys truly disrupted the real estate market, and really grateful for your time and your wisdom. It's been a huge encouragement. So
I'm happy to be here, Doug. And let me tell you something. We're in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the world. And regardless of what people think, even from a business community standpoint, we're still in the best situation and scenario. And I don't think that's going to change. I think the opportunities for everybody, business-wise, to be here and make things happen, it's going to be fantastic.
Yep.
I'm positive. I don't think it's going to take a hit at all.
Optimism. I love that. Thank you for joining us on Decision Points. Have a great rest of your day.